My name is Linda Navarro, and I'm 28 years old. For the past 5 years, I thought I was building the kind of life people envy: steady, dependable, grounded. I had a boyfriend, David, whom I met in college. Back then, he was charming in a quiet, bookish way. We studied late nights at the library, shared ramen dinners when our wallets were thin, and promised each other that one day we'd live without worrying about overdue bills or cafeteria food. That one day came. We moved into a one-bedroom apartment on the east side of the city. It wasn't big, but it had tall windows and creaky wooden floors that made it feel alive. I poured myself into making it ours, painting walls, thrifting mismatched furniture, filling shelves with novels I had read, and sketchbooks I still hoped to finish. David used to call it our little sanctuary. He'd say, "Linda, this place is proof we can build something together." I believed him. Every corner of that apartment was a memory. Late night movie marathons, burnt pancakes. On lazy Sundays, plants that thrived under his careful watering but died in my care. It was all stitched together with love, or at least what I thought was love. I'm a graphic designer. I work hard, but I love what I do. David worked as a content creator, chasing bigger dreams of building his own brand. He was ambitious, restless as always, looking for the next leap. I thought I was his anchor, steadying him when his plans spun too far. The last few months, though, something shifted. He was glued to his phone at odd hours, his laughter hushed in private. Sometimes I'd walk into the room and his fingers would dart to lock the screen, as if his world no longer had space for me. When I'd ask what was so funny, he'd brush me off with a smirk. "You wouldn't get it." That phrase hit harder than he knew. Slowly, I stopped feeling like his partner and more like a piece of furniture in my own home. Useful, quiet, but unseen. I convinced myself it was stress. He was planning some new venture, or maybe he was overwhelmed by work. That's what I told myself when he snapped at me for small things, when his affection turned into mechanical gestures instead of warmth. Then came that Tuesday. I had just survived a brutal day at work. Clients with impossible deadlines. A boss who thought yelling was a motivational technique. All I wanted was to sink into the couch with a cold beer and maybe David's arms around me. I pushed open the apartment door, dropped my keys on the console, and headed for the kitchen. That's when I saw it. A leather-bound diary sitting open on the counter right beside the empty coffee maker. It startled me. David never left it out. He was oddly protective of that journal, always tucking it away in his nightstand. I had never read a word of it respecting boundaries, even when curiosity tugged. But now it lay there carelessly, a page split open like an invitation. As I reached for the fridge, my eyes fell on the words in the center of the page. They screamed at me louder than any alarm. "I'm going to see my soulmate tonight." For a moment I couldn't breathe. My heart didn't just sink. It seemed to fold in on itself, collapsing under the weight of those 10 words. The beer I pulled from the fridge felt like a brick in my hand, dragging me into a cold, dark ocean. My eyes scanned downward, and though the words blurred, they pierced me all the same. Linda is fine, predictable. She's stable, safe, but she's so small. She thinks too little, dreams too little. I need more. Julia is different. She makes me feel alive. She believes in my ambition. Linda just wants quiet nights, a house with a garden, a boring life. Julia is my soulmate. I know it. Small, boring. Words David had never said to my face, but wrote down as if branding me with them. I thought of every night I stayed up helping him edit his videos. Every design I made for his website for free. Every time I proofread his sponsorship emails so he'd look professional. I thought of the joint savings account I had poured my own earnings into because I trusted him with my future. And this is what I was to him, a placeholder, a harbor to rest in until he could swim to something bigger. Shock burned into anger, anger into grief. But then strangely a calm settled over me. It wasn't peace, it was finality, cold and sharp. There was nothing left to fight for. His decision had been made long before I saw those words. He had already left me in his heart. I placed the beer back in the fridge, my hands steady as if they belonged to someone else. I walked to the bedroom, pulled out my small duffel bag, and began to pack essentials. Toothbrush, a change of clothes, my laptop. Only what was mine. None of the sweaters he bought me, none of the trinkets tied to our shared life. I closed his diary, slid it into my bag. My last act of honesty was a yellow post-it note, pressed against a coffee maker, 3 words. I know. I glanced once at the apartment, our couch, our bookshelves, the life we had built. No, the life I had built while he dreamt of someone else. Then I opened the door, stepped into the night air, and walked away. Not once did I look back. For the first time in 5 years, I had no idea where I was going. But I knew one thing. Wherever it was, it had to be somewhere without him. The city blurred past my car window as I drove aimlessly through the night. I didn't have a destination, only a need to keep moving. Every traffic light felt like a test stop, breathe, and risk thinking too much or keep going, and let the hum of the tires drown it all out. My phone lit up on this passenger seat. The name glowing on the screen made my stomach knot. David. I stared at it as it rang once, twice. My hand trembled not with longing, but with the weight of a decision. Answering meant stepping back into the fire I'd just escaped. Letting it ring meant silence, but also unfinished business. On the third ring, I picked up. Linda, what the hell is this? His voice was sharp, panicked. Where are you? I let out a slow breath. I'm out. What do you mean out? You can't just leave. Are you trying to scare me? This isn't funny, no joke. I said, my tone flat, almost detached. I found your diary, David. You left it open on the counter. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. I could hear him breathing quick and uneven. I pictured him in our kitchen staring at the post-it on the coffee maker, his mind racing through excuses. Finally, his voice returned, sharper now, tinged with indignation. You invaded my privacy. That was private, Linda. How could you do that? I almost laughed. The absurdity stung more than the betrayal invaded your privacy. You wrote that you were going to see your soulmate tonight. You wrote that I'm small, boring, just a safe bet. And you're mad I found out. You don't understand, he stammered, his panic slipping into desperation. It's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like, I repeated softly, tasting the bitter irony. Then explain it to me. Explain how calling another woman your soulmate is anything other than betrayal. His voice faltered. Then came the backpedal, shaky but practiced. It was just fantasy writing a way to process my feelings. You know I'm under pressure, always chasing something bigger. I was confused. That's all. Julia means nothing. She's just someone who makes you feel alive. I cut him off. The words dripped with sarcasm, yet my tone remained eerily calm. Too calm. You wrote it, David. Those weren't slips of the tongue. They were thoughts you carved into paper because they were too heavy to carry. Linda, you're twisting this. I never said I was leaving you. I was just exploring feelings. You don't get how hard it is for me, always wanting more in you. And me, what I snapped the first crack in my composure. My grip tightened on the steering wheel, and me being steady, predictable, making sure rent got paid, proofreading your sponsorship deals until 2 a.m. That's what makes me small to you. His voice dropped low, pleading now. I didn't mean it like that. You've always been there for me. I was just lost. I didn't know how to tell you I needed excitement. I don't want to lose you. A bitter laugh escaped me. You lost me months ago, David. You just didn't notice. The words hung in the air. My calmness unnerved him. I could feel it through the silence, like he expected screaming, sobbing anything but this measured detachment. Linda, don't do this, he whispered. We can fix it. Please don't throw away 5 years. I stared at the road ahead, the city lights blurring like tears I refused to shed. I'm not throwing anything away. You already did. I'm just the one picking up the pieces. Linda, his voice cracked, desperation leaking through. No, my tone turned to steel. I don't owe you this conversation. You made your choice when you wrote those words. The woman you called small and boring. She's gone. You don't get her back. Before he could reply, I ended the call. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was powerful. For the first time in years, my world wasn't tethered to his voice. As I drove deeper into the night, I realized something chilling. Yet liberating, a part of me had died in that apartment. The version of Linda who clung to David, who believed love meant being his anchor, had vanished. And though grief clawed at me, beneath it was something else, a quiet flicker of freedom. The first night away from David was the longest of my life. I crashed on my cousin's pull-out sofa, staring at the cracked ceiling until dawn. Every creak of the old pipes, every car horn from the street below reminded me I was no longer in our apartment. My body felt restless, as though it hadn't yet caught up with the fact that I'd walked away. The air in her place smelled faintly of lavender detergent and candle wax. Safe but temporary. That word temporary became my shield. I told myself the hurt was temporary. The sleepless nights, the phantom ache of reaching for someone no longer there. The echo of his diary words, small, boring, safe. They haunted me, but only for now. Daylight forced me to move. I threw myself into work, staying longer at the office, so exhaustion might dull the grief. At night, when my cousin made tea and asked gentle questions, I offered short answers. I'm fine, just tired. Lies disguised as coping. But when she went to bed, I'd sit alone with my laptop scrolling through old photos I hadn't deleted yet. David and me at the farmer's market, arms full of flowers. David holding up his first big sponsorship check. David asleep on the couch, his head in my lap. Memories that once felt warm now looked staged, like I had been cast as the background in someone else's story. I tried to erase him piece by piece, deleted his number, blocked. His socials, packed a few items I had taken from the apartment into a small box and shoved it under the bed. But grief has a way of finding cracks to slip through. Some nights I'd wake up reaching for my phone, half expecting his goodnight text, only to remember the truth. Still slowly a rhythm formed. Morning coffee at my cousin's tiny kitchen table. Long hours at the office sketching during lunch break, something I hadn't done in years, cooking simple meals for myself. At first it all felt hollow, but somewhere between the silence and the small routines, I caught flickers of peace I hadn't realized I'd lost. Weeks passed. Then out of nowhere, a message from Clara, a mutual friend who had been in David's orbit as long as I had.
Linda,
Can you believe what happened with David and Julia? My heart stuttered. Julia, the name inked into his diary, his supposed soulmate. I met Clara at a coffee shop near her office. She slid into the booth with wide eyes, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You won't believe it. Julia wasn't who he thought she was. I braced myself, not sure if I wanted to hear more. Clara continued anyway, words spilling like a dam had broken. She wasn't some high-powered partner. She was a consultant on contract temporary, just like half the staff at his firm. She strung him along, told him she could help him level up his business. Meanwhile, she was stealing client contacts right from under his nose. The firm found out, fired him on the spot, and blacklisted her. And then get this, she ghosted him, completely disappeared. He lost everything. Job, reputation, even some friends who cut him off when the truth came out. I sat there stunned. The bitter taste of irony filled my mouth. The woman he had called his soulmate, the one who made me small in comparison, had used him as nothing more than a stepping stone. Clara's voice softened. I shouldn't be laughing, but Linda, it's like karma. Cold, brutal karma. I didn't laugh. I wanted to. I wanted to relish the justice, to feel vindicated. Instead, all I felt was a hollow ache. David had betrayed me. Yes, he had chosen someone else. But hearing how far he had fallen, how quickly his world crumbled, didn't bring me joy. It only underlined the truth I had already known. He was never the man I thought he was. That night, lying awake on the sofa again, I replayed Clara's words. Fired, ghosted, ruined. And yet, even as I tried to shut it out, one thought echoed. If Julia was a fraud, then what does that make me? A consolation prize. He cast aside before the scam revealed itself. I turned onto my side, clutching the pillow. For the first time since leaving, I whispered the truth into the dark. I wasn't small. He just never saw me. The words didn't heal me instantly, but they cracked something open like the first ray of light through heavy curtains. And with that small flicker of clarity, I promised myself I would never again let anyone define my worth. Not David, not his diary, not even karma. The first message came late on a Sunday night. A number I didn't recognize lit up my phone. I miss you. We should talk. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. For a moment I felt the old reflex, the muscle memory of 5 years of loyalty. But then I remembered his diary, the words etched into my mind like scars. Small, boring, safe. I put the phone face down and let the message rot in silence. A week later, another attempt. This time a flood of texts, long rambling apologies. I made a mistake. Julia was a liar. She tricked me, Linda. You're the only one who ever cared. Please, I see that now. Don't turn your back on me when I need you most. Not once did he apologize for what he wrote about me. He apologized for the consequences he faced, not for the cruelty he inflicted. It was never about love. It was about losing his safety net. I didn't answer. Then came the voicemail, a block number, a voice I hadn't heard in weeks. Linda, please just call me back. I know I hurt you, but you have to understand I was lost. She was a mistake. You were always so good to me. I can't sleep. I can't think. Please, I need you. I need us. His voice cracked, trembling with tears. Once that sound would have broken me, sent me rushing into his arms. But now, listening in the dark, it didn't stir sympathy. It stirred something else. Relief. Relief that I wasn't on the other end of that desperation anymore. Still, I won't lie. The silence wasn't easy. Some nights lying awake, I'd replay his words in my head. I need you. I can't sleep. Please. They tangled with my memories, with the 5 years I had given him, with the part of me that still longed to be chosen. But every time doubt crept in, I reminded myself of the truth he had chosen. He had written it down in black ink. He had already walked away from me in his heart. The final attempt was in person. I had just started a new job at a small design agency downtown. I was walking back from lunch when I saw him at the front desk, disheveled eyes bloodshot, clutching his phone like a lifeline. My stomach dropped and instinct took over. I ducked into the stairwell, heart racing, sending a quick message to my boss. Personal emergency. Please don't let that man upstairs. Minutes later, my phone buzzed with a new text. I know you saw me. Don't be a coward. You owe me a conversation. Ow him. That word stuck like a thorn. As if loyalty had been a debt. As if love had been a loan I was obligated to keep paying long after he defaulted. I smiled bitterly, slipped my phone back into my pocket, and walked to my desk. No reply. Not anymore. That night I stood at my apartment window looking out at the city lights. The Linda who once would have opened the door, listened to his excuses, wept into his arms. That Linda was gone. In her place stood someone quieter, steadier, and somehow stronger. For the first time I felt the weight of silence. Not as a burden, but as power. Every unanswered text, every ignored voicemail was a choice to protect myself, a choice to live without being defined by his validation. He wanted me to break the silence, but I realized the silence was mine, and I wasn't giving it up. 1 year later, my life barely resembled the one I had with David. I'd moved into a loft apartment at the top of an old brick building. High ceilings, wide windows, sunlight is spilling across polished wood floors. My cousin had helped me carry in the last of my boxes, and I'd stood there that first day staring at the empty space, whispering, "This is mine." I filled it with what I loved, plants that actually survived under my care shelves, stacked with sketchbooks and design books, bold art pieces I'd collected at flea markets. I launched my own freelance design business, and for the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. To celebrate, I hosted a small housewarming party. My closest friends gathered around mismatched chairs and a thrifted dining table, laughter bouncing off the loft's brick walls. Clara raised her glass to toast to Linda, to new beginnings, to freedom, and to never letting anyone call us small again. Everyone clinked glasses, warmth filling my chest. For once I wasn't haunted by what I'd lost. I was anchored by what I'd built. Then 3 knocks at the door. They weren't confident like a friend's. They were hesitant, fragile, as if the person on the other side wasn't sure they'd be let in. A hush fell over the room. I walked to the door, heart tightening with a strange premonition. When I opened it, the sight stole the breath from my lungs. David, but not the David I remembered. The man standing in front of me was a ghost of himself. His hair hung limp, his shirt wrinkled, eyes bloodshot and swollen. He looked smaller somehow, as if life had pressed him into a thinner, weaker version. "Linda?" His voice cracked on my name. "I know I shouldn't be here, but I had to see you. I need to explain. I need." His face crumpled. "I need you." Behind me, the party went silent. My friend's eyes burned on my back, but all I saw was him, once the center of my universe, now a stranger trembling on my doorstep. He stepped forward, slightly, eyes pleading. "I know what you're thinking, that I chose wrong, that I betrayed you. And I did. God, I did. Julia ruined me. She used me. Left me with nothing. But Linda, you were everything. You're still everything. I was blind. Please, I'm ready to come home to us." His gaze flicked past me into the loft. He saw the art on the walls, the life I had built without him, the laughter that wasn't his anymore. His face twisted in shock, then desperation. I see it now, he whispered. I see what I lost. You were never small. You were never boring. You were the one. You were always the one. The old Linda might have broken then, might have let his words stitch over the wounds he caused, but that Linda was gone. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing but finality. The woman you're looking for isn't here, David, I said, my voice steady, calm. She doesn't exist anymore. She died the night she found your diary. He flinched as if I'd struck him. Don't say that. You're still you. I shook my head. No, I'm not. That Linda, the one who stayed up until 2 a.m. for you, who poured her savings into your dreams, who begged for scraps of affection while you chased someone else, she's gone. You killed her with your words, with your choice. He opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off. Look around you. This life, these friends, this peace. I built it from the ashes of what you burned. You called me small, but without you I've grown into something bigger than you'll ever see. Tears pulled in his eyes. Please, I can change. I can be better. Just give me one more chance. I stepped back, my hand on the door. No, David. You wanted a woman who made you feel alive, who believed in your ambition. You got her. She showed you exactly who she was. And now you get to live with that choice. That's your lesson, not mine. He stared at me broken, realizing the reversal of power. The man who once dismissed me as a placeholder now stood as the unwanted guest on the other side of a door he would never cross again. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply closed the door. The sound echoed through the loft like a full stop at the end of a sentence I had been writing for over a year. I turned back to my friends. Clara's eyes glistened. My cousin gave me a small nod. And as I raised my glass once more, a smile tugged at my lips. I was not small. I was not boring. I was free.